The Newcomer, page 7. A nurse entered the room with coffee for Victoria. She gratefully accepted it, and the nurse left. Victoria remained standing, cautiously sipping from the hot brew. Rachel fidgeted in bed, still wondering why the scientist was there, and trying to block out the thoughts of her husband Troy being somewhere close. "I've been told that you were part of that roundup." Rachel stopped arranging her pillows and looked at the scientist. "Even if you were allowed to stay with your husband and baby, you three would not have survived much longer. Our air is contaminated with various diseases created by our not being able to process the dead and dying quick enough. Australia's dead lay rotting for weeks before we could dispatch our cleanup crews." Rachel glared at Victoria, who was trying to stifle a giggle. "I apologize for my lack of sensitivity. I've been dealing with this and much more for so long that I seek refuge in the poetic justice that I come across. You see, because of our situation, many professions aren't necessary. Scientists, nurses, doctors, teachers, well, we're all in great demand. Others, they have no function. So you see, the cleanup crews that were finally able to be sent to Australia consisted entirely of accountants and lawyers." Victoria finished her joke, laughing wildly at the image of lawyers dressed in spacesuits heaving dead carcasses into the back of dump trucks, while space accountants kept a running tally. Containing herself after the belly laugh, she continued, "You must be wondering why a person of my standing is here with you." Rachel sat up, dismissing the woman's momentary insanity, since she was finally getting to the point. "It's imperative for us to gain your support, for we're tapped out and can't afford to lose a person with medical training. We need you to join our cause." That did it. Victoria Lamberst had hit the wrong nerve. Thinking back to the last time that Rachel had heard these words, "We need you to join our cause," filled her with disgust and self-hatred. If she hadn't been greedy for status the last time that someone had said those words to her, she would not be in the position that she found herself in now. Her thoughts turned back to the baby and the husband she'd lost. Her emotions exited her body through a burst of tears. Victoria exhaled and turned from the sight, becoming annoyed by Rachel's display. Realizing that she had to win the girl over, she set her coffee on Rachel's nightstand and put her arm around the sobbing female. "I've lost my husband, my father, my sons, my brothers to Laconium, not to mention the women that I've lost to disease." As the list from Victoria's family tree grew longer, her compassion grew shorter. Self-preservation stepped in, enveloping Victoria within an ice sculpture of cynicism and professionalism. She turned from Rachel, bringing her coffee with her to the window. "We've all felt the pain of loss," she said, then drained her coffee. The bitter liquid burned down her esophagus with its extended promise of indigestion. As the bile rose, she turned towards Rachel. "At least you've the luxury to mourn your losses." Rachel's crying stopped as the word set in. "You call this existence a luxury?" "Yes, I do," the scientist said, and she returned her view to the trees. Stripped barren, the bleak branches stretched cilia-like into the contaminated sky, confirming Victoria's jealousy with a stark caricature of repressed emotion. "You know that your husband and daughter are alive and are being well cared for," she said coldly. "But did you know that the rest of your family has been completely wiped out?" These words stapled Rachel to where she sat. "How dare you?" she asked, struggling to get up. "In one breath you've uttered your disgust with me and have informed me of my family's demise." The scientist's time had become as short as her patience. "Like I've said, Rachel, we've all got our crosses. There's no time for grief. I was once a revered scientist. Now I'm knocking myself out in the laboratory. I'm working in the emergency room. I'm scrubbing toilets or emptying bedpans, for Christ's sake." Rachel watched the woman's maddening pacing bring her to the foot of her bed. "I'm here now because I just happened to have a free second. A second that I would rather have spent napping, not arguing with you." "Then leave. I didn't ask you to come here." It's just not that simple, Victoria started, then became quieted. It's time to relocate you, for we found the time to deal with our round-up females. She turned from the bed and went over to the door. She had lost her battle with her anger, and anger rarely gains supporters. She tried another tactic. I was supposed to gain your support, she said, while stifling a cry. It doesn't look like I'm doing a very good job. Stunned by the austere woman's loss of control, the prisoner patted her chair and asked Victoria to come and sit back down. The jailer smiled and wiped away her flow of tears. Turning towards Rachel, she said, while checking her digital watch, "Thank you, but there is no time. Because you've run away before, we have two options for you. One of them is prison, the other is to become a martyr to our cause." She didn't wait for a response. Many women doctors who were once in prison for tax evasion or other such nonsense have been given your choice: dedicate your life or become a selfish hindrance. Some of them who were released tried immediate escape. They were caught and put back in jail where they can rot for all I care. There is no time for rehabilitation and all that shit. She stopped when she realized that she swore again, pausing with closed eyes to compose herself. When she opened her eyes and spoke again, she sounded infinitely tired. "I never thought that I'd be back in the ER, but my time is carved into the slots where I'm needed. You have a few minutes to make up your mind, Mr. Foray, but let me add just one more thing." She came back to the foot of Rachel's bed, then bent down and placed her hands on the end of the mattress. Leaning in towards Rachel, she said, "I can't imagine life in prison, sitting idle with nothing to do except to think and to feel and to grieve." Saying that, the scientist stood back up and left. Rachel was discharged that day to become a doctor. When not on duty as one, she was in the lab, taking or screening samples of blood, urine, saliva, and sperm. Her unofficial duties included cleaning toilets or bedpans, stripping sheets or doing laundry, hauling garbage or preparing meals, in short, anything and everything necessary to keep the hospital and boarding house running. Whenever personal thoughts invaded her mind, they were quickly dispersed with another duty. When her obligations brought her to the nursery, she performed her tasks without allowing herself to have special feelings for her own daughter who lived there. Though she examined, changed, and rocked Ava many times during the child's stay, she strived to disconnect her motherly feelings so that they could be shared with the other infant daughters under her care. By the time that Ava was moved to a ward away from the nursery, constant fatigue had diminished all of Rachel's personal emotions. She felt nothing by her daughter's absence or by her transfer. Rachel was never given the opportunity to see her husband. All the male children, male infants, and the few surviving male adults were secluded in a private wing and were cared for by the staff who lived there. Unauthorized doctors were not permitted access to that wing.